Como.
That's right.
You've been in some strange places.
Yeah, and especially all the strip clubs. I got knocked out with Muddy Waters, actually. That's where the guy jumped up behind me with a ketchup bottle and smashed my head open, knocked me out cold. And I got docked the show's pay because the owner of the club said I was a professional. I should have expected this type of thing. So he pulled 1 day's pay out of me.
What provoked the man with the ketchup bottle?
What provoked him? And now you're like someone, now why would someone just hack 9 people to death? Why? But the guy's just an idiot. Why would someone, I said thank you very much, and the guy jumped me and hit me with a bottle. Obviously, I must have provoked him somehow. Maybe some of those people just didn't like me, as you said earlier.
Right. You played strip clubs, too?
Yeah.
What kind of comedy goes over in a strip joint?
Well, you know, it was just... Actually, it was great. I mean, I was 19, and I would go to work, and there would be nude girls at my job, this was a wonderful job to have as a 19-year-old college student. You know, my friends were at Wendy's covered with peanut oil or something, and I would just be fixing pasties and whatnot. But it was, you know, the audiences were so bad, it was actually good, because I got a chance to be on stage without anybody paying attention. So I could... The worst place I ever played was in Minnesota, a place called the Mine Shaft. It was a strip club called the Mine Shaft. And guys would pay $5 to get in, and then another $5 for a miner's hat with a light on it. And there were no lights in the club, just the lights from the miner's hat. So I would be standing on stage, essentially in the dark. Someone would look over once in a while, and you would, you know, you would go like this. But most of them were just staring at the women, whatever part of the women they wanted to look at, you know, who were dancing sort of nude over here. And I would just be in the darkness going, so, have you been to McDonald's today? Have you seen that new McLean burger? Just nothing. Occasionally someone would look over, you know, and you go like that. It was just awful, a week of that.
Why didn't this premise sweep the nation? This
I
seems
don't
like
know.
it had franchise possibilities to me.
It did, but it never caught on. Never caught on.
What was this offer? I couldn't believe this when I saw this in the research. Somebody actually had a notion to make you a professional wrestler?
No, I was looking for managers, and in Boston, I went down and said, managers, theatrical, and I mentioned this guy, you know. So I went down to the office, and I walked in, and this guy handled wrestlers like Gorilla Monsoon, and he had a big, Gorilla Monsoon, big cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
So I went in to see the guy, and it was like Coco in Fame, you know. I went in to see him, and he says, what do you do? I said, I'm a comedian. Comedian, huh? How tall are you? I'm about 6 foot. What do you weigh, 180? Stand up, stand up. He goes, just go like this. Go, I said, really? He goes, oh, good, good. He said, I tell you, you be the comedy man. You be the comedy man. You wrestle a guy, when he gets you in a headlock, you tell him a joke, he falls down laughing, you pin him. That was the thing, you know.
Another great premise.
Yeah, I said, well, I don't know. I said, that's not really, well, oh, no, you'll make $1 million. You be the comedy man. You be the, you know, all you have to do, you get the guy laughing so hard, you know. I said, well, no, that didn't work. So I didn't. That's what I always liked about wrestling. People had certain moves indigenous to them.
Yeah.
Like only Chief Jay Strongbow could do the tomahawk chop.
Right.
You physically had to be an Indian to be able to hit somebody with, you know. Or the Iranian had the Iranian head squeeze, you know, which only an Iranian, because of the genetic makeup
only
of the human.
Bobo Brazil could do a cocoa butt.
Right, right, all that kind of stuff, you know. So
right.
it was just very funny.
You want to tell me a quick story before we say goodnight?
Yeah, I did Oprah Winfrey the other day. You know, the show goes good. So she does 2 shows a day, right? So I go back in the green room to get my stuff, and there are 4 guys there. And they go, Jay Leno, hey, when do you start? I said, 20. Oh, great, they're a big fan. They sign, so I sign all the stuff, you know. And I'm Bob and Bill. Hey, nice to meet you guys. See you later. So I walk in and I said, who are those guys? They're doing the next segment. Men who have murdered their wives. That's what it was. I'm signing stuff. Isn't that unbelievable?
Are those Nielsen homes where they're going?
What's it? Men who have murdered their wives. I'm going, hey, Jay, how you doing? Hey, good luck. When do you start?
He starts Monday. See you later.
So I said to the band member, the band leader, I said, look, I'll just say thank you very much. Okay, that'll be my cue to get out. He goes, okay, great, that'll be your cue. So Dinah's sitting there, you know. We have a very funny young man here. He's come all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. Please welcome Mr. Jay Leno. Now she goes over and starts reading some notes, and I walk out, you know, and I said, oh, good to be here. And I did this joke I had done on the Tonight Show. I said, I'm originally from the United States. Any United States people here tonight? So for some reason, it gets a big laugh. And I said, oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, meanwhile, the band leader goes, put this in, and I'm standing there, and I'm going, and he keeps going, and meanwhile, Dinah's reading the notes. She goes, come right over here and sit next to me, you know. So I said, all right. You know, so I sit down, and she goes, that was some of the funniest fresh material I've heard.
So it's a one-joke stand-up.
Yeah, and I said, well, thank you. You know, at this rate, I could do the show for forever, you know.
How long did it take for you to click with Carson?
I didn't click until I started hosting.
Really?
I'd done the show, like most comedians at the time. I had more attitude than I had jokes. I mean, I was a guy who could walk on stage and go, everybody doing, yeah, nice tie, pal. Da-da-da-da, be loud, walk the stage, get laughs just by being physically imposing and big. And I had some jokes, but they were this far apart. They've got to be this far apart to be on TV, you know? So the first time Johnny saw me, he didn't care for me very much. I wasn't very good. And so I worked, and I took all my jokes, I put them into one sort of set, which was my first Tonight Show, which went very well. Johnny came over, terrific job, we'll have you right back. The second time I was on, I did okay. The jokes were okay. They weren't as good as the first. The third time, okay. And the fourth time, no, okay.
Yeah.
It's to the point where they weren't really calling me unless somebody was a fallout. And I realized, well, this is not good. I mean, I'm just going about this all wrong. I tried to do like 4 shots in a year, and it just wasn't the way to do it. So they didn't call, and I didn't call. I said, oh, I'm not going to call these people again until I'm really, really ready and tight. So I went on the road, and I worked all different kind of clubs. And then the Letterman show came along. And here was a show where everybody was my age. I mean, I've sort of mentioned this before, but, you know, when I would do the Tonight Show, there was Mr. LaSalle, Mr. DeCordova, Mr. Carson. I mean, I was 27, and these were grown men. And I didn't grow up in the kind of house where people called older people by their first name. You know, I hate that about California. Jay, this is my parents, Julie and Bob. How are you, Mr. and Mrs. Haggerty? How do you do? I'm not going to call you Julie and Bob. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
It's just, if I met your parents, I wouldn't, I go, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Costas. You know, I just didn't grow up that way. So I always felt odd on the Tonight Show. I'd sit down, and I would make a wisecrack, and I'd go, that's a nice tie, Mr. Carson. You know, and I realized, that sounds stupid. I should say John. And it was awkward, you know? It was just a square peg kind of thing. Suddenly I went on Letterman, and I said, you know, I'm just going to wear the jeans that I wear and the kind of stupid clothes that I wear on the road. And then suddenly it really started to click. And I could throw out an obscure reference that Dave would get precisely because he was my age. You know those kind of references. Anybody older, anybody younger wouldn't know what you know, I threw out something about Sky King or just some obscure TV show from our past. Letterman would fall off the chair laughing. I realized, oh, here's someone who knows exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it just fit. So I started to gear my shots, and I just did Letterman's, and I did 48 of them or something. And I got a call one day. Jay, you've been doing a good job on the Tonight Show, on the Letterman Show. Would you like to host? Host? I said, sure. Okay, but we'd like you to do the show with Johnny first. I said, oh, okay. So I figured, well, I'm not going to make the mistake I made the first time around. So I really put together a real strong stand-up set and some real funny panel stuff. And it went great. Johnny called me, oh, terrific job. And I said, oh, this is what I should have been doing the first time around. So from that point on, they asked me to guest host, and it went pretty well. I know this is my first time. Now you see this drinking cup here?
Is there something lacking?
No, I don't expect Johnny's cup, or even a cup with my name on it, but Manimal, I mean, isn't there a show that, can we have something that's on this season?
The way you clicked with Letterman, I think part of it was also because you and he had a real shared experience.
Right.
Not just that he thought you were funny. Sure, Carson's a stand-up, but you and David had been to the same sort of comedy clubs in the same era. So that was immediate, and the audience, even if they couldn't put their finger on it, the audience can sense that above and beyond what's funny in and of itself. They sense that relationship.
Well, you know, being a guest on the show is harder than hosting because you're playing to the host. And if I'm telling Johnny a joke, if he's not laughing, nobody else is laughing. If he's falling off the chair, I did great, regardless of what you think of it at home. And it's the same thing with Letterman. I always kind of know what makes Dave laugh. Anyway.
But you enjoyed your flight.
Well, you know what it is? It makes these stops. And it's not even like regular stops. It's so like the pilot can show the plane to his friends. You know, that kind of... I remember once I did the Letterman show, and I did this old routine about in college you could have drugs, you could have sex, you have women in your room, but you couldn't have a hot plate. This is an old joke. It's one of the first jokes I ever wrote, you know. And Letterman heard the joke in like 74. He heard me do this joke, and he used to always tease me about it, you know. And I hadn't done it in years. And then about 86, I was on Letterman. I was almost out of material, and I said, you know, Dave, when I went to college, And when I dragged this old joke out, he fell off the chair laughing, not because it was funny, just because it was like the oldest, you know, he was just hysterical. I had dragged this thing out of the woodwork. And yet the next day on the street, people saying, boy, you killed Letterman with that thing. Oh, I never saw him laugh. So, you know, so it just, I mean, that's what makes it fun.
You seen after these Depend, these, you know, these undergarments? Yeah. No, listen, I mean, I saw this in a magazine.
Serious problem.
You know, they show a woman in a garden hoeing or something, you know. And the ad, notice what the ad said. I mean, it was something like this. The ad said, Depend undergarments, it's not just for people with bladder control problems. And I'm thinking, how lazy do you have to be? No, wait a minute. Look, it's a Saturday afternoon, you're lying on the couch watching the game. Honey, bring me some more beer, will you? Oh, these Depends are great.
How bad do you feel about whatever people perceive that you and Dave were vying for the same spot?
Well, you know, it was an odd situation because I was not aware until we sort of got it that was even a problem. It wasn't as if I had been hosting Monday, somebody else Tuesday, Dave would come in on his week off and do the Tonight Show. So it did catch me by surprise. And I think the choice on NBC's part was not one of somebody being better suited or whatever. I think it was a case of they had two extremely successful programs. Now, do you make one successful program or try to keep two? And I think that was probably the biggest part of it, Dave almost being too successful in the job he's in. I would think, but that's, I mean, I can't speak for Dave, so I don't know. But he called me right after and said, look, this isn't about you, you know. And I said, Dave, I know that, and we're friends, and I've done the show a couple of times since then, you know.
And have you been following the, of course you've been following the election.
Politics?
Yeah,
big fan of politics, Dave. Big fan of politics. Yeah, there's not much to choose from this year. I mean, I think if God had wanted us to vote, he would have given us candidates, and we don't have much. Well, you know what's fun? I like to watch him sort of squirm, like Clinton with the marijuana thing, you know. Like he said he tried it, but he didn't like it. Now, this is amazing when you think about it, really. I mean, 40 million Americans have smoked marijuana, and the only ones that didn't like it were Judge Ginsburg, Clarence Thomas, and Bill Clinton. I mean, those are the only three. You know, and then they always say, I'm going to get caught. How'd they come up with a name like Tombstone, huh? They must have even worse drivers than Domino's. And some Hollywood news. Actress Suzanne Summers has signed to star in her first feature-length motion picture. It's called Thigh Master, the movie. Yeah. So that could be good. Yeah.
Everybody knows you're funny. You've been doing stand-up for a long time, so you come out on the Tonight Show, and it's only a matter of crafting it to fit the circumstances. But the new thing was the interviewing. How much better do you think you've gotten at it since you first started?
Well, I think we've gotten better. You know, that's hard to judge. When I go out on the road and there are 3,000 seats and they're all sold and everyone's laughing, I don't care what the promoter says. I know I did fine. You know, when you do television and the network comes down, you're doing poorly with 11-year-old immature boys between 11 and 15. I don't know what to tell you. You know? Yeah. All right. I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have to go by what people say to me and how just people on the street. And I do read the mail. You know, the mail is important to me. People say, why did you pick on this guy? And I say, oh, I wasn't picking on him. I was having fun with him. But if I get a bunch of letters, well, maybe people thought I was picking on him. You know, like I had Goodman on, and I was calling him a big guy, and I was sort of teasing him about, I said, now do you get your clothes at the big man shop? He goes, no, I go to Petite. And I saw a bunch of them together, you know. I mean, he was very funny. We had fun with him. But people said, oh, it was so embarrassing. You're picking on him because of his weight. Oh, we were just two guys having fun. I mean, do people really misinterpret that? All right, maybe I rethink it next time around and maybe handle it a little bit differently. So,
suppose you've got somebody on, though, that's involved in some kind of controversy. Now, right up front, we say, it's not half an hour like Nightline or even like this program. You only got 5 minutes, and it's a different situation.
What kind of controversy?
But do you go after the controversy? Suppose Bill Clinton did the Tonight Show. What do you do?
I wouldn't have a politician on.
You wouldn't?
No, I think you have to set certain standards. You know, I mean, having politicians on is, you know, then once you have Margot Adams on because she slept with a bunch of ball players, you know. I mean, you can't have people on who will then take the show from you and use it for their own particular gain. You know, having any political candidate is bad. After the election, if Clinton wanted to come on and play the sax with Branford, fine. And then Jerry Brown can play the flute or whatever it is, or whatever Klingon instrument he has, or any of those people, that's fine. But to have them on where they can sit down and say, Jay, what this country needs, no, under no circumstances. People are on the Tonight Show because you like them and they've earned the right to be there.
All right, let me give you a different example.
Okay.
Spike Lee comes on.
Yeah, I had
and he
Spike
has
on.
been on.
Yeah.
All right, now obviously there are a lot of areas of controversy with Spike.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Oh, I'd like to have him on again. I had him on once, and I talked to him in the dressing room, and he was great. And then when we got out on the stage, it threw me because he kind of went to yes and no answers, and I found myself tripping and flubbing questions and things. So I would like to have him again. He may be controversial, but he's also an entertainment figure, and he's interesting, and I like what he has to say. It's not, his controversy is not for personal gain. You know what I'm saying? It's for, he's talking about an issue. That's a little bit different. That's a little bit different. A politician is there for their own, you know, particular horn to blow.
So I guess what I'm getting at here is some people have said not enough edge in the interviewing. I mean, again, not that this is Meet the Press, but a little bit too much off the card, or a little bit too much
well, you know,
leeway given to the
what I
guest.
say, you know, it's so funny. I pulled some of Johnny's reviews from 1962, and it's exactly what they said. They said, oh, he was too easy on the guests. Oh, he didn't go after them. You know, you've got to establish a relationship. As I've done the show now, I'm hosting Johnny Carson's show. So when I go into your house, I don't put my feet up on the table. I'll put them up on my own table, or if I buy the house, I'll put them on the table. But at this point, I don't. So you sort of, you know, it's like kind of getting in a disagreement with your girlfriend's father. You can disagree and go, you know, sir, well, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
And then when you marry, you can do whatever you want. You know, then you don't have to have the guy over anymore. But when I'm on Johnny's show, I realize I'm not going to overstep my bounds here. And plus, you need to establish a relationship with the guests. If they see, oh, well, he was good with Sybil Shepherd, and he was good with Armand Asante and some other people like that, or maybe they know someone who's not normally good on talk shows, but it was good with Jay, then as you do the show, you can become more controversial and let your opinions get out there, which you will see. You know, I've had to sort of hold my tongue and pull back. I don't think I was ever what was perceived as the next host for The Tonight Show. All through the 70s, too ethnic, too dark, not American-looking. I would always hear that on these kind of shows. People would say, oh, you'd never see a Jewish guy host a show because it doesn't represent, or Italian, or black. I mean, Arsenio and I used to laugh about that, actually. You know, I used to say, they never let an Italian guy, and he said, well, they never let a black guy. I mean, now we both have shows. So the country has changed that way. So to get to this point, it's a matter of, you know, when I was a kid, I always liked Mort Saul more than I liked Lenny Bruce. Because to me, Lenny always preached the converted. You go down the Village Vanguard, and you got a bunch of people there who agree with you already. But when Mort Saul would come on the Ed Sullivan Show and talk about Joe McCarthy, suddenly you had people going, hey, do you hear what he said about McCarthy? I mean, maybe it wasn't a hard-hitting joke, but it was hard-hitting enough to make a point.
Yeah,
you know?
especially because he's wedged in between, you know, Topo Gigio and
right.
some guy with a Russian bear or something.
But I think you do more by, I mean, by sort of getting the general public to hear it than you do by getting a bunch of people who already believe what you're saying.